As far as I know, nobody likes learning about iPhone camera settings. But if you want to take the highest quality photos possible, and if you want iPhone photography to be as convenient as possible, then it's really important that you get the camera settings right. So in this video, I'll share with you the correct iPhone camera settings that you should be using throughout this course and throughout your iPhone photography career. Let's begin. I'm going to start by opening the Settings app of my iPhone. From here, I'll scroll down until I find Camera Settings. Once I open that, here are all the settings that are related to the photo capture and video capture using the Camera app of the iPhone. Now, you might see slightly different settings depending on which iPhone model you're using and also which operating system you have. So I'm using iPhone 11 Pro on iOS 14, and these are the settings I have. You might not have all the settings that I have on my screen if you have an older iPhone, and if that's the case, just adjust the settings that you do see on your own phone. We're going to start with formats. So formats is essentially the image file format that will be used to save your photos and your videos. And here you have two options. You have high efficiency and most compatible. I recommend that you go for high efficiency. That is a newer, more modern image file format and also video file format. So if you take photos using high efficiency, they'll take up about 2 times less storage space on your iPhone. They also show richer, more nuanced colors because this format can actually save more colors than the most compatible format. And as an additional benefit, if you take live photos, the video file that comes with the live photo will actually be saved in the same image file. So all in all, it's just a more modern, more efficient image file format. Now, when the high efficiency format first came to the iPhone, there were some quality issues that I noticed when I was using this option, but I'm happy to report that Apple has resolved this problem, and now you'll be getting the best image quality if you select the high efficiency option. The only reason you might consider most compatible is if you run into some compatibility issues when you're sharing your files with non-Apple devices. So if you're a Windows user and if you're struggling with those high efficiency files, then most compatible might be a better option for you. But if you don't have any problems with this, I strongly recommend that you stick to high efficiency because that way you'll get the best image quality possible. But now I'll tap the camera button at top left-hand corner, which will take me back to camera settings. We won't be talking about video much in this course, but in case you're interested which video settings I use, then here are the ones I recommend. After that, the next option that is of interest to us is called Preserve Settings. So let me open that. In Preserve Settings, essentially, you can choose if you want to keep the settings you select in your camera for every time you use the camera app. So if you make an adjustment in the camera app, for example, if you switch from the photo mode to portrait mode to take portrait photos, by default, the next time you open the camera app, you'll be back to photo mode again. But if you want to choose to preserve the camera mode, you have that option at the top. The other sliders you have here work in the same way, so they allow you to preserve various camera settings. I personally recommend that you keep all of these options off because you never know when you're going to need to quickly grab your iPhone and take a photo in a matter of seconds. And if for some reason you have the wrong settings or you have some kind of adjustment that you don't need, you might end up ruining that photo and perhaps there won't be another opportunity to take it. Because of that, I actually like the fact that every time I open the camera app, it resets back to the default settings, which happen to be the most useful settings for the most photos. And because of that, I keep all of these off and I don't have to think about it. If I make a change, the change is only going to stay in the camera app while I am in the camera app. When I pick up my iPhone later to start shooting, I'll be back to the default settings. So when I pick up my iPhone and when I need to start shooting fast, I'll be sure that I'll have the right settings that I need and I don't have to think about it at all. But now let me go back and let's look at the next setting, which is use volume up for burst. I recommend you keep the setting on, and what this setting will do is allow you to use the volume up button at the side of your iPhone to capture burst mode photos. Now, a burst mode photo is essentially a photo that's taken very quickly. So the iPhone is capable of taking about 10 photos per second using the burst mode, and if this setting is enabled, you'll be able to activate that function using the volume up button. I'll show you everything about the burst mode in a separate video, but for now, just keep the setting on. Next up, we have grid, and if you turn the setting on, you'll see the rule of thirds grid in the viewfinder of the camera app. So let me show you what that actually looks like. So as I open up the camera app, you'll see that I have 2 horizontal and 2 vertical lines across the frame, and I can actually use these lines to compose my photo according to the rule of thirds, and I can also use these lines to ensure that my horizon is straight. So it's a great tool for composing your photos. And while we're here, look at that image. I'm really happy with what I'm seeing. I love this beautiful boat, but even more than the boat, I'm really excited about those white puffy clouds at the top of the frame. These are perhaps the best clouds you could have for photography, so make sure I press the shutter to capture this image. And while we're here, there's another thing I want to show you. So if you look carefully at the top and at the bottom of the screen, you will see that I'm kind of seeing a preview of what's outside the frame. So at the bottom of the screen, even outside the viewfinder, I can still see some sand, and at the top of the screen, outside the viewfinder, I can still see some sky and some clouds. This is a relatively new feature that Apple recently introduced, and I think Apple was really excited about it, but I wasn't, because for me as a photographer, it's really important that I get to compose my photos accurately, and one of the key composition decisions that I have to make is what stays in the frame and what goes out of the frame. As a photographer, you take the whole reality, you take everything in front of you, and you just frame a small part of it to create a perfect image, a perfect composition. But if you actually see what's outside the frame, it gets really confusing, and oftentimes you won't really know, or you'll struggle to see what stays in the frame and what stays out of the frame. And because of that, I'll go back to settings and I'll make sure that view outside the frame option is turned off. So now, if I open the camera app again, you'll see that the top and the bottom of the screen are now completely black, so I know exactly what stays in the viewfinder, and I don't have to worry about accidentally making the wrong composition decision just because I was confused about what stays in and what stays out of the final photo. But now, let's go back to settings again. The next setting I'd like to talk about is called Mirror Front Camera. And this setting is actually quite confusing, so rather than talk about it, let me show you what this setting does. I'm going to open the camera app again, and in order to switch to the front-facing camera, I need to tap on the icon at the bottom left-hand corner. So it's the icon that looks like 2 arrows that are kind of going in a circle. Once I tap there, I'm now using the front-facing camera. Now, I'm not an expert on taking selfies, but one thing that's really important is that you look at the earpiece of your iPhone. If you look at the shutter button instead, you are going to get a slightly strange angle where your eyes are kind of looking away from the camera, so you don't want that. Instead, make sure your eyes are looking at the earpiece. And what I also want you to notice is that I am on the left side of the frame, so you can clearly see that my face is on the left. So let's go ahead and let's take a photo. Okay, and now if I open that image by tapping on the image icon at the top left-hand corner, you'll see that I'm on the right-hand side. So what's going on? I was supposed to be on the left, but now I'm on the right. It turns out that when you're using the front-facing camera of the iPhone, the viewfinder actually shows you the mirror image. So it's exactly the kind of thing you'd see if you were looking at yourself in the mirror. However, when you actually press the shutter, you don't get a mirror image. And because of that, if in the viewfinder I was on the left, in the final image, I'm going to be on the right. Now that's kind of confusing because I just composed one photo, but I got something totally different. I don't want that. So to prevent this, I'm going to go back to the settings, and here I'm going to turn on mirror front camera. And if I now open the camera app once again, you'll see that this time when I compose a similar selfie, where once again I'm going to be on the left hand side, if we now look at the resulting image, I am indeed on the left. So that's how you can fix this problem. And finally, we have just a couple more settings left. So back in the settings app, the next thing you'll see is called Prioritize Faster Shooting. What the setting does is essentially prioritize the speed of your images over image quality if you're taking a lot of shots quickly. Personally, I'd go for quality, And the newest iPhones, they're so fast in how they take photos that I've never really had a speed issue. So whenever I press the shutter, everything just works instantly and a photo is taken immediately. But what actually happens every time you press the shutter is that there's a lot of processing going on behind the scenes. You don't really see it, but when you take a photo, the iPhone does millions and millions of computations to give you the best image possible. And if you have the Prioritise faster shooting turned on, some of those computations won't take place, so you won't get as good of an image that way. That's why I recommend keeping the setting off, unless you have some kind of problem with how quickly your iPhone takes photos. I don't have that problem, so I'm going to keep this off. And finally, we have Smart HDR. Smart HDR is a really great feature. On some iPhones, it could just be called HDR, but here on the latest iPhones, it's called Smart HDR. Now, HDR stands for High Dynamic Range. What this essentially means is that your iPhone will take the kind of photo where the entire image is properly lit. So the darkest parts of the image and also the brightest parts of the image will all be properly exposed. That means nothing will be too dark or too bright. The iPhone is really, really good at this. In fact, it does HDR much better than big cameras can do it. So that's actually a strength of the iPhone camera that big cameras lack. And Smart HDR is what makes it possible. I recommend that you keep Smart HDR on at all times. From my experience, it works so well that you don't have to worry about having it on. You can just keep it on and forget about it, and your iPhone will take the best photos possible. Now, on some older iPhone models, next to HDR, you might also see a setting that says Keep Normal Photo. If you have that setting, I recommend keeping that on as well. But here on iPhone 11 Pro, I don't even have that option, because Apple is so confident that it's going to get Smart HDR right every time that it doesn't give me that option. But if you enable Keep Normal Photo, then when you take an HDR photo, you're actually going to get two images, one with HDR and one without. And that way you can choose later which version of the image you like best. But again, for iPhone 11 Pro, I don't have that option because Apple is so confident that Smart HDR is going to work every time. And to be honest with you, Apple is right because it does work all the time. That's why I recommend keeping it on. So there you have it. These are the correct iPhone camera settings that I recommend you use throughout this course and throughout your iPhone photography career. Now, I know it's not that much fun to talk about settings, and I kind of wish we didn't have to make this video, but the thing is that with the correct camera settings, you're going to get so much better photos, and it's going to be so much easier to use your iPhone camera. That's why it's important that you take a moment now to set your iPhone camera to the correct settings, and then we can move on to even more exciting topics, knowing that the iPhone will be taking the best images possible.